I'd shower you with coconut cream pies.
Oh, it gets so much worse. When making an adaptation of something, you want to do it with as much justice as possible, while doing things with the adaptation that the source material can't. When you adopt a book to a movie, you want it to be the most cinematic version of that book ever, with visuals that make the world of the book come to life. When you adapt a movie to a TV show, you want to take the popular characters from the film and place them into continued adventures, essentially telling stories about these characters that the movie is too restricted to do so. But when it comes to video games, this is where it gets complicated. Video games are the only medium where they can do everything and more. Long, engaging stories of a book, stunning visuals of a movie, humor and adventures of a TV show, all while boasting gameplay on top of all that. When adapting a video game, the goal is to remove the gameplay so that those that either can't keep up with the gameplay department, or refuse to keep up, can keep up with and enjoy the other elements of the game. I'm sure that as gamers, you can think of some games that would make great movies or TV shows. This is because the narratives and visuals of the game are such that simply removing the gameplay would be enough in order to ensure that the movie succeeded. This is where we hit the biggest snag as far as adaptations are concerned. You see, most of the video games that have enough plot to them that they would make great movies are niche titles that ordinary people wouldn't know about. Let me give you an example. How many of you recognize this character? Yeah, okay, yeah. Now, how many of you recognize this? Yeah, that's what I thought. This is where the biggest enemy to great artistry and storytelling come to ruin everything. Big budget corporations. When a movie or a TV corporation decide to fund an adaptation, they only want the most recognizable of characters to the mainstream audience. It doesn't matter how well a series sold or how well reviewed it is. Does everyone in the world know who the main character is, and will they immediately make the choice to get on board and come see it based on the branding alone? These are the big questions that businessmen ask in order to decide what they should pump their money into. And even they don't pump as much money as needed. Comic book movies were like this for the longest time, churning out bad schlock that looked like half the budget of a college finals project. This is mostly because that, while the product had brand recognition, the companies responsible for funding them didn't have enough confidence that this kind of movie would have mass appeal outside of its already established fan base. Which is why some of the baffling changes were made, such as X-Men wearing all black leather.
You actually go outside in these things?
What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
It wasn't until Marvel started the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Iron Man back in 2008 and proved that comic book adaptations have merit that we started to get actual quality when seeing our favorite comic book superheroes on the big screen. With productions and budgets that made these movies look like, well, actual movies. This is because producers and big companies were no longer afraid of putting blockbuster budget into these movies. Iron Man showed the big movie companies that changes intended to appeal to a mass market didn't need to be made. And unfortunately for us, video games have not hit this big confident point yet. There's no Iron Man for us, though Detective Pikachu looks promising. This means that most, if not all, video game adaptations have small budgets and are made in the cheapest way possible in order to quickly make a profit on the name. Because that's the goal of big movie companies anyway. Now, originally, this was the part where I talk about Sonic the Hedgehog and his abysmal movie adaptation. How it's the product of the exact same problems that once plagued comic book movies, how his model looks like a really ugly joke of a Sonic Generations mod, how the lack of other Sonic characters besides Sonic himself indicate greediness on the producer's part to pay for more than one model, how the predictable plot of the movie reeks of we're not confident enough in our Sonic movie to make it a Sonic movie, how hiring Jim Carrey to play Dr. Robotnik is pretty much a straight-up admission that they have no idea what the character is like and just wanted to be able to put Jim Carrey on the poster. Even the choice to change Sonic's voice actor from Roger Craig Smith to Ben Schwartz. There was literally no reason to do that. It's not like Ben is going to be in a hedgehog suit on camera. It's literally a cartoon hedgehog. The only reason they did it was, again, so they could have the name on the poster. Or perhaps Roger saw the train wreck this was going to be and they had to hire Ben Schwartz because Roger refused. But Paramount is actually changing the design of Sonic due to fan backlash. Granted, that won't save the movie because everything else is still completely terrible, but at least they're listening on some level. So instead, I'll be talking about an adaptation that hits all of these points. One that wanted brand recognition, but wasn't confident in some of the elements of the plot, so hasty changes to characters and setting were made to make it appeal to a wider audience. And even then, they half-assed everything anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, I am of course talking about the Donkey Kong Country cartoon. The Donkey Kong Country cartoon is a French-Canadian production. It was animated by Nelvana, and post-production was done by Media Lab in Season 1 and Hong Guang Animation in Season 2. Let's start with what's already apparent when watching. The visuals are ugly. The character models used were obviously trying to match the pre-rendered look of the SNES game. The problem with that is that these models looked good on the SNES because of the system's limitations. The plain textures and models are hidden by the pixelated sprites. When those limitations are removed, the true ugliness of the models really start to stand out. The fur texture looks painted on. Anywhere that the body parts are supposed to be connected, it looks like they just clipped the models into one another and didn't bother creating a realistic connection. The worst part's the muzzles, which look like they're glued to their faces. Not to mention the laziness of them. A lot of the models are reused. I'm pretty sure DK's model is used for Bluster, Funky, and Eddie, and the Pirates are just repurposed King K. Rool, Clump, and Critter models. But the ugliness of the models could have possibly been overlooked if the show wasn't so poorly animated. The faces have this weird squash and stretch to them, as if the characters' skulls are made of pure cartilage. Not to mention that the movements are twitchy and lightning fast. Look at this one scene of Donkey Kong singing. It looks like he's having a stroke.
Your love is like a dream come true.
Diddy has it the worst though, as he has that weird Sonic mono eye with two pupils, but rather than make the eyes actually blink, only the pupils do. It's really weird, but where the faces are so flexible, the bodies are too stiff. The movements are too stilted, and rather than look natural, they look like people struggling in plastic suits. Like in this scene where Cranky is supposed to be playing the organ, but his hands are just hovering aboard the keyboard.
Some people call me negative, they don't like my frown. They all try to cheer me up, but I'm down with being down. I know what you're thinking. He's a genius, cause I am, cause I'm...
At least we know where Tails learned to type. What doesn't help this is the fact that they almost never stop moving. The characters are always moving their hands or their heads. It's the opposite of the Hanna-Barbera problem. They'll point, they'll nod, they'll move their hands around, randomly twitch. It's like they're too afraid to have the characters stand still for any amount of time. Even running is too complicated for these animators. Ironically, when animation would be preferable, like in fight scenes, the camera just pans to a discretion shot and we don't see the action. Which is odd, considering how much of the characters move when not fighting. I honestly can't do the animation justice, so I'm just going to show you a highlight reel of the best animation in the show.
I'll make you swab the deck and then I'll throw you in the brig. I swear I'll make you walk the plank to right the wrong you did. The day you mess with scurvy, all you wish you'll ever mourn. When the coconut is mine, then you'll feel his pirate sword. Donkey Kong! I'll blow you out of the water! Oh, as steady as she goes now. One more! On mission. I thought you'd like to know. Donkey Kong has in his possession the golden banana of Inca Dinkadoo.
Ooh, I'm really scared.
You should be. You'll be punished. You're grounded.
Papa, you love birds.
Oh, Clump.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Cut it out, you lunkhead! What you got? Hip hop, hip hop. Got a lot. Peters! Honk!
Oh, easy, because sometimes, DK, no offense here, but you get a little out of control.
Yeah, we're, moving in. Hip hop, hip hop, hip slammer!
Whap 'em, mash 'em, crush 'em to smithereens!
No mercy!
This is my finest hour.
Candy!
I guess lunch is over.
Well, isn't this special? A formal luncheon. Aren't you a little out of your league, Donkey Kong?
Here I go creeping. Shh, don't make a sound. Get the crystal coconut and candy come around.
And finally, the biggest display of laziness and animation on the show. Watch this musical number with King K. Rool and pay attention to the critters in the background.
It's great to be a king. I seem to have a knack
for taking everything I want and giving nothing back. I'll take away your jellies, I'll take away your jams. Have a nice vacation when I take your travel plans. Now that I have the power, this is my finest hour. Nothing on this earth can stop me now. Everything is mine. I finally have control. Excuse me, I hope I don't sound too droll. I'll take your color TVs and the banana, if you please, and I'll put an end to this silly world peace. Fools, while I watch you cower, this is my finest hour. Bait you on my hook, just like a worm. Before I crush you like a bug, come over here and give me a hug. It gives me so much joy to watch you squirm.
That's right. The animators were so lazy that they couldn't even bother making more than 3 critters use the same copy-pasted animation at the same time. The rest of the critters just stand there motionless, and in some shots they aren't even there. If I had eyes, I'd roll them right now. The plots of each episode of the show can be slightly varied, but each one of them will involve King K. Rool making a play for the show's glazed MacGuffin.
Forget your troubles, come on, get happy.
We're going to chase all your cares away.
Shout hallelujah, come on, get happy.
Today is Glazed MacGuffin Day.
The Crystal Coconut. I'm only going to go over the first episode because I can explain most of this show through this episode. It starts with a breakdown of the show's basic plot from Cranky, followed by an attempt from King K. Rool to seize the coconut. And now I have to talk about King K. Rool, because his personality was changed for the cartoon. In the games, K. Rool is mostly DK's dark mirror. He's as big and strong, if not bigger and stronger, than DK, and isn't afraid of going toe-to-toe with the big ape at all. In fact, it's usually DK who has to find a more clever way of attacking K. Rool. In the cartoon, he's very much DK's opposite. He's a weak, cowardly reptile who wouldn't dream of going a single round with DK, and instead concocts various schemes to get around DK. His voice matches this, with the game's version having a deep, commanding voice.
I want you to do everything in your power to keep Donkey Kong distracted. Steal that hoard of golden bananas he treasures so much, and take care of his pathetic friends. This time there can be no mistakes.
While the show's voice is lighter and much more devious.
I order you to seize the coconut.
It fits this version of K. Rool, don't get me wrong, but it seems like the change was made in order to have him be a more generic villain that was easier to write. Anyways, after DK dispatches his enemies, not by brute force, but with barrel traps that Cranky could have activated himself, DK goes to see his girlfriend Candy. Remember Candy Kong? I bet a lot of you do. Though I don't think this cartoon would do her... Who's that? No, seriously, who is that? Is that supposed to be Candy? Donkey Kong's sweet, laid-back girlfriend from the games? Ah, fuck. Why did they have to change her design so much? It's not Moral Guardians. She still wears a crop top and shorty shorts. She even still bears her midriff. The only thing I could think is that they didn't want to animate Candy's hair and just decided to rewrite her entire character so they didn't have to. Anyways, this scene perfectly displays my 2 least favorite characters in the entire show, Candy and Bluster. First, Candy is a bitch. Every time something goes wrong, every time something happens to her, she always blames DK and breaks up with him. Then somewhere later in the episode, they get back together for a stupid reason. In this episode, she gets a cake from Bluster, who we'll talk about later. And when she rejects it and Donkey Kong shows up with a gift of his own, Bluster fucking dumps the cake on her head. And how does Candy respond?
Every single time you show up, things just fall apart. Both of you are just a couple of pains in the butt.
Yikes! Ouch!
You're out of here.
I guess this means our date's off, huh?
That's right. She blames DK. What a bitch! Bluster dumping the cake on your head was not DK's fault. Speaking of Bluster, this is Bluster Kong. He's an asshole. He's supposed to be Donkey Kong's rival in love, but he's superficial about everything, even going as far as to put the whole of Congo Bongo, not DK Island by the way, in jeopardy because he wants to impress Candy. Alright, so anyway, Candy dumps DK, and then we cut to King K. Rool hatching a scheme to cut DK's hair and weaken him with a curse, and use a robot double to do it.
I'm Candy Kong's comely look.
like we're one and the same.
Oh yeah, musical numbers. The show had at least 2 musical numbers per episode. And while DK's singing voice ain't that bad,
Can such a pretty thing as this make things really go amiss? All I want is Candy's kiss.
I can't say the same about the others.
You're a fool, can't you see that there's a curse?
So the robot arrives to cut DK's hair and says this.
Snip, clip, power slip. You're a wimp, and that's it.
What?
Snip, snip, gonna clip. Make you my sweet and sexy chimp.
I did not need to hear someone say the phrase sexy chimp. I feel a little faint. So after the robot cuts DK's hair... Oh god. That's his skull? They didn't even try. They did not even try. King K. Rool makes another play for the coconut this time with his soldier Crusher, who handily beats the weakened DK and they get away with the coconut. Then this happens.
Ever since Candy cut my hair and told me she wanted to make me her little love slave.
No. Must not think about... I'm fine. I'm fine. Woo! Get out of here. So after that bit of squick, Cranky informs DK that he's under a curse, and DK figures all he needs is a bunch of bananas. So Funky takes him off to a banana plantation while Cranky whips up an antidote for the curse, and gets Candy to give it to him, since the one who gave him the curse has to give him the antidote or it won't work, and apparently the real Candy can give him the antidote even though the fake Candy was the one who put the curse on him. Just go with it. Episode's almost over anyway. So Candy and Bluster are on their way to DK when K. Rool hears about the antidote and shoots the helicopter out of the sky. Then this happens.
I'm tired. My feet are sore. I have sand in my shoes and I'm thirsty.
You're not wearing shoes! Either it's lazy animators or lazy writers, but either way, someone messed up! Then Bluster, being the asshole that he is, pours the antidote on the ground so DK will be weak forever. Then this happens.
Huh? What? What's happening?
It's the biggest, hugest, humongous banana tree I've ever seen.
Hey, DK! Donkey Kong!
What?
It's a miracle! An omen! A sign from a sign place! Look! More bananas!
No, not another bite. It's not gonna work.
You have to! Open up! What do you got to lose?
My lunch.
One banana bullseye! Hey, huh? Look at your head! Your hair is growing back! So are my muscles!
I didn't clip any of that. The banana tree grows, then Diddy throws an unrelated banana in DK's mouth, and everything is fixed. Holy mother of all plot holes, this writing is lazy! So, DK gets his strength back and defeats K. Rool. We get an ending gag with the robot, and everyone lives happily ever after, blah 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 blah. This cartoon sucks. Overall, the Donkey Kong Country cartoon is completely mediocre production brought on by cheap, lazy staff who couldn't even bother to get their story straight. Cheap animation, lazy writing, it's exactly like the Sonic movie in that regard. Paramount only cared about the name of Sonic the Hedgehog and wanted to make a quick box office bomb to get some extra cash, by spending as little as possible while still making it look like something you could put into theaters. If Crash Bandicoot ever makes a movie, I personally want it to be animated. That way no major design changes need to be made, and have Crash look realistic and the story be more engaging to a blockbuster audience. Ugh. Thanks for watching! If you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel and ring that little bell. It'll take you 2 seconds and can only benefit you. Also, go follow my Twitter to get updates on the channel, hot takes from yours truly, and the occasional meme. Thanks, and I really need to get a sign-off. What I really need is to take a shower. Love slave.